February 18th, 2025, a Scottish archaeologist crawls through a 40-centimeter opening deep inside a mountain in Egypt. He squeezes into a chamber that hasn't been entered in 3,500 years. And when he shines his flashlight on the ceiling, he sees something that makes him burst into tears. This is the discovery of Thutmose II's tomb, the first royal Egyptian burial found since Tutankhamun in 1922. And the story of how they found it changes everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. Let me take you back to October 2022. Dr. Piers Litherland, a Scottish archaeologist working with the New Kingdom Research Foundation, was surveying a remote area about 2.5 kilometers west of the Valley of the Kings. This wasn't even the Valley of the Kings itself. It was an area called Valley C, or the Western Wadis, a desolate stretch of mountain that most archaeologists had written off. Litherland wasn't looking for a king's tomb. Given the location, near tombs of royal wives and queens, he thought he might find the burial place of one of the Thutmose queens. Maybe a princess, maybe a high-ranking official. But when his team uncovered the entrance and began exploring the corridors, something didn't add up. The corridors were coated in white plaster, a sign of care and status. The architecture was simple but deliberate. And as they cleared debris from flooding that had damaged the tomb thousands of years ago, they started finding fragments. Small pieces that would change everything. Alabaster jar fragments, decorated with hieroglyphs. And when they cleaned them and studied the inscriptions, they saw two names that made their hearts race: Thutmose II and Hatshepsut. Now, if you don't know much about ancient Egypt, let me explain why this is absolutely massive. Thutmose II was a pharaoh of Egypt's 18th dynasty, ruling around 1493 to 1479 BC. That's over 100 years before Tutankhamun. He was married to his half-sister, Hatshepsut, who would later become one of Egypt's most powerful female pharaohs. But here's the thing. We already had Thutmose II's mummy. It was discovered in 1881 in a cache of royal mummies that priests had moved and hidden to protect them from tomb robbers. So we knew what he looked like. We knew how he died. But we had never found his original tomb. Until now. For 3 years, Litherland's team worked methodically, clearing debris, documenting everything, analyzing fragments. And then came the moment that would make headlines around the world. Litherland crawled through a narrow passageway. We're talking about an opening barely 40 centimeters wide, 10 meters long, in darkness, in a 3,500-year-old tomb. Can you imagine? The claustrophobia, the anticipation, the weight of history pressing down on you. And then he entered the burial chamber. In one corner, still visible despite thousands of years of water damage, was a blue-painted ceiling decorated with yellow stars. This wasn't just decoration. This was a royal marker. Only pharaohs' tombs had this specific celestial ceiling design. Quote, "When I came out," Litherland later told the BBC, "my wife was waiting outside and the only thing I could do was burst into tears." When you come across something that you're not expecting to find, it's emotionally extremely turbulent, really. On February 18th, 2025, the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities made the official announcement. The tomb of Thutmose II had been found. The first royal tomb discovered since Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's in 1922. 103 years of searching. And finally, an answer. So, who was this pharaoh whose tomb was lost for over 3 millennia? And why did it take so long to find him? Thutmose II was not one of Egypt's famous warrior kings. He wasn't a builder of massive monuments. He wasn't Ramses the Great or his own son, Thutmose III, who would become known as the Napoleon of Egypt. Thutmose II was the son of Thutmose I and a secondary wife named Mutnufret.
To legitimize his claim to the throne, he married his half-sister, Hatshepsut. the daughter of Thutmose I and his great royal wife. This was common practice in royal Egyptian families. His reign was brief, only about 14 years. He conducted some military campaigns in Nubia and Sinai, putting down minor rebellions. But compared to the pharaohs before and after him, his reign was quiet, modest. And then he died young, probably in his early 30s. When his mummy was discovered in 1881, scientists could see he had been physically weak, possibly suffering from chronic illness. Some scholars believe he had a skin disease. Others think he may have died from an infection. He left behind a very young son, Thutmose III, born to a minor wife named Isit. His daughter with Hatshepsut, Neferure, was still a child. Because Thutmose III was so young, possibly only 2 or 3 years old, someone needed to rule as regent until he came of age. That someone was Hatshepsut. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Hatshepsut started as regent, the temporary ruler, guiding the kingdom until her stepson grew up. But within a few years, she did something almost unprecedented. She declared herself pharaoh. Not queen, pharaoh. She wore the false beard, she wore men's clothing, she took on full pharaonic titles, and she reigned for about 22 years, becoming one of ancient Egypt's most successful rulers. So here's the question that archaeologists have debated for decades. Did Hatshepsut erase evidence of Thutmose II? Did she deliberately minimize his reign to make her own rule seem more legitimate? Is that why his tomb was so hard to find? Or was Thutmose II simply a minor pharaoh whose tomb was robbed, flooded, and forgotten? The location of the tomb gives us a clue. It's not in the Valley of the Kings proper. It's in a remote area, closer to where queens and royal wives were buried. Some scholars now believe Hatshepsut herself oversaw his burial, and she chose this location deliberately. But why? Was it honor? Was it to keep it hidden? Was it because the tomb had already been damaged by flooding and they needed to move his burial? The artifacts found inside might give us answers. Now, I need to be honest with you. This is not going to be another Tutankhamun. When Howard Carter opened Tut's tomb in 1922, he found it nearly intact. 5,398 objects, golden chariots, elaborate furniture, the famous golden death mask. It was the archaeological discovery of the century. Thutmose II's tomb? It's been heavily damaged and thoroughly looted. But what they did find is absolutely fascinating. First, that blue ceiling I mentioned. In the surviving section, you can still see the painted blue background with yellow stars, a representation of the night sky. This design was used exclusively in royal tombs during this period. It's definitive proof that this was a pharaoh's burial place. On the walls and fallen ceiling fragments, archaeologists found traces of text from the Amduat, one of the most important funerary texts in ancient Egypt. The Amduat describes the journey of the sun god Ra through the 12 hours of the night, and using it in a tomb was a royal privilege. Until the 21st dynasty, only pharaohs and a very select few nobles could have this text in their tombs. But the most important finds were those alabaster jar fragments I mentioned. These weren't just any jars. They were duck vessels, small containers shaped like ducks that Egyptians used to hold cosmetics, perfumes, and ointments. The inscriptions on these fragments gave archaeologists the smoking gun. They read, "The deceased King Thutmose II," and also bore the name of Queen Hatshepsut. This is the first time any funerary furniture belonging to Thutmose II has ever been discovered. There's nothing like this in any museum anywhere in the world. They also found a broken wooden shaft, possibly from a ceremonial fan or spear. It was made from African blackwood, known as Pharaoh's ebony, an extremely luxurious wood imported from deep in Africa. Analysis shows it was meant for high-status use, and it too bore the pharaoh's title. There were ceramic shards from ritualistic vessels, Hes and Nemsit vessels, used in burial ceremonies, pieces of whitewashed storage jars, fragments or decorated plaster that had fallen from the walls. Everything was covered in a thick layer of sediment. Because here's what happened. Shortly after Thutmose II was buried, the tomb flooded. We're talking about a catastrophic flood that filled the chambers with water and debris. The ceiling collapsed in some places, the walls crumbled, the decorations were destroyed. Ancient Egyptian priests, probably around 1000 BC, about 500 years after Thutmose II's death, realized the tomb was compromised. So they did what they did with many other royal burials. They moved his mummy to a safer location. They took the valuable grave goods, the gold, the jewelry, the elaborate furniture. They reburied him in what we call the royal cache at Deir el-Bahri, along with dozens of other royal mummies. That mummy is now in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization in Cairo. You can go see it today. But for over 3,000 years, his original tomb remained lost, damaged, and forgotten, until Dr. Piers Litherland squeezed through that narrow passage and shined his flashlight on that blue ceiling with its yellow stars. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Just 1 week after announcing the tomb discovery, Dr. Litherland dropped another bombshell. He thinks there might be a second tomb. About 2.4 kilometers from the first tomb, there's a massive man-made pile of limestone, ash, rubble, and mud plaster. It's 23 meters high. That's about 75 feet. It's been deliberately constructed to blend seamlessly into the natural mountain. Litherland believes this might be where Hatshepsut moved Thutmose II's burial after the first tomb flooded. Think about it. She had the power, the resources, and the motivation to give her husband, and the legitimizer of her own claim to power, a proper, secret burial. His team has used ground-penetrating radar and found evidence of a structure beneath that massive pile. A structure that could be a tomb that might still be intact. Now, let's be clear. This is speculation. It hasn't been excavated. We don't know what's under there. It could be nothing. It could be another damaged, looted tomb. But the possibility, the tantalizing possibility, is that somewhere under that pile of debris is an untouched royal burial. Imagine if they're right. Imagine if there's a second tomb of Thutmose II that contains the treasures that should have been in the first tomb. The sarcophagus, the canolkic jars that held his organs, the shabtis, the servant figures, the furniture, the gold. Dr. Litherland's team is continuing their survey work. They're being methodical, careful. In archaeology, you don't just start digging because you think something might be there. You plan, you document, you get permissions, you secure funding. But the possibility is there. This discovery also shows us something important about the state of Egyptology today. For decades, people have said, all the tombs have been found. All the great discoveries are in the past. There's nothing left. And yet, here we are in 2025, and a Scottish archaeologist finds the tomb of a pharaoh we've been looking for since the 19th century. What's different now is the technology. Dr. Litherland's team used satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and systematic archaeological survey methods that didn't exist decades ago. They've been able to analyze those wooden fragments and determine the exact species of tree. They can date the plaster. They can reconstruct what the decorations looked like based on tiny fragments. And if one royal tomb can still be hiding in plain sight, what else is out there? The tomb of Alexander the Great? Cleopatra's burial place? The missing pyramids of Ahmose? The desert keeps its secrets for a long time. But eventually, persistence and technology win out. So why does this discovery matter? Why should you care about a relatively minor pharaoh who died 3,500 years ago? First, this is about filling in the gaps of history. Thutmose II has always been the forgotten pharaoh, sandwiched between his father and his son, overshadowed by his wife. We have almost no monuments with his name, very few inscriptions. He's a ghost in the historical record. But he was the link. He was the connection between Thutmose I and the eventual glory of Thutmose III. He fathered one of Egypt's greatest military leaders. He was married to one of its most powerful female rulers. Understanding his tomb, his burial, his reign, it helps us understand the entire 18th dynasty. Second, this tomb sheds new light on Hatshepsut. The inscriptions showing her involvement in his burial, the location of the tomb, the care taken despite its modest size, all of this tells us about her relationship with Thutmose II. Was it political? Was it genuine? The evidence suggests she honored him, even as she later took his throne. Third, this tomb shows us what the ancient Egyptians did when things went wrong. The flood damage, the deliberate moving of the mummy, the attempt to preserve what could be saved. This is ancient disaster management. These priests were trying to protect their heritage, just like we do today. And fourth, this discovery reignites public interest in Egyptology. It reminds people that history isn't dead. The past isn't settled. There are still mysteries to solve, tombs to find, stories to uncover. Every time a discovery like this makes headlines, kids around the world suddenly want to be archaeologists. Students enroll in Egyptology programs. Tourists book trips to Egypt. The past becomes alive again. Dr. Litherland said something profound in his interview. He said, "You dream about such things, but you never really think it will happen to you." That's the power of archaeology. That's the thrill of discovery. Somewhere out there, buried under sand or rock or water, is the next great find. And it's waiting for someone curious enough, patient enough, and lucky enough to find it. The tomb of Thutmose II has been found after 3,500 years, but its secrets are still being revealed. And somewhere in the Western Wadis, beneath 23 meters of rubble, there might be another tomb waiting. What do you think? Could there be an untouched royal burial still waiting to be found? Let me know in the comments. If you want to follow more breaking archaeological discoveries, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Next week, we're diving into another 2025 discovery that's even more shocking. Thanks for watching, and remember, the past is never really gone. It's just waiting to be found.